So technically, 32 months into the cryptocurrency bull market. Now, some people think it might just end tomorrow, which I understand, but the data states that we may well continue up until the end of the year. The stock market is breaking all-time highs, and Ethereum is at big levels of resistance, which could send it a lot higher. And not to mention altcoins, altcoin dominance, stable currency dominance is doing stuff we want it to do. But this is where I think existing people in the market get trapped, but more importantly, also retail aren't in yet. But I think eventually they will start to look at this market and go, I want a bit of that again. So we're going to break down timing, a little bit of the structure, and more importantly, what to look for overall with altcoins. And drop a like if you're still here. Let me know. 500 likes plus at least today, so make that a mini little challenge and also engage in the comments. Say hello. Do your thing. Now, on the screen is something very, very simple. It's Bitcoin. And I know you all go, Bitcoin, it's crap, it's slow. But what we need to do and what we need to talk about is from November, which is roughly around here at the bottom, kind of there, to the top, to now, is 139 bars, which actually equals, wait for it, 32 months. We all know this, right? Now, this is where it's important. And I've talked about this a little bit before, and let me just get my other notes on my screen just so I get the picture. This is typically where it gets a little bit interesting, right? Just putting that point out there. Now, it's 139 weeks, as you know, I've just said, and normally, typically, 35 to 37 months is where roughly the cycles kind of top out in the past, right? Now, in terms of the time element of that and putting that into the fine-grained details and the nitty-gritty of it all, bear with me, we're looking between this point here, which would equal October, to potentially December. So, are we still looking? And I know, right, I'm going to put this point out there, and feel free, whatever, to disagree, agree. It seems a bit too obvious, doesn't it? Oh, we're going to have the exact same sort of blow off like we did in the last cycle of 2017 and maybe potentially 2021. Imagine if it was literally to the T, the 4-year cycle. And if it is, fair play. But I don't think it will be. I think something's going to happen. And I think Bitcoin's a bit of a child sometimes. It does its own thing. And also, we've got to look at the fact that what if Bitcoin cools off? What do altcoins do? And we've had that in the past as well. We can talk quite a lot about that, can't we? In terms of how Bitcoin stood still for a while, then altcoins went rampant for 30 odd days in 2017 into the early couple of days of 2018. Same with 2021, where we kind of blew off a little bit and then we kind of rotated into altcoins, had a crazy flurry for a bit. Then we had a massive 50% correction in altcoins and obviously Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin did another run and altcoins went even higher. Not all of them, but some of them did. So it's interesting, right? Yeah, it's interesting. But use this moment to plan a little bit more than panic, I think. For me, I've did it before. You all know my kind of points. It's very, very transparent here. I would be getting twitchy up here, but it could go higher. The thing is, as I've alluded to it, and I've said it before on my Patreon and stuff like that as well, Bitcoin is like a 6-year-old. It just does its own thing and does what it wants, but it does follow a set of rules. Those set rules at the minute currently seems to be the 4-year cycle. That's interesting. Now, if you're interested, Blowfin on the screen, no KYC, open to the UK. I don't know how long for, but jump in. There's a decent welcome bonus, and more importantly, 20% back on fees. That is if you're trading, because we're going to talk about altcoins, and I think there's going to be some pretty wild trades coming up soon. Now, Ethereum is hovering around a critical zone, in my honest opinion. I'm not going to go too crazy with this, but ultimately, when we talk about breaking levels of structure from last year, we are not that far away. And there's a bit of randomness on my screen here. Now, let me just delete that bit, bump. We could be looking at, if we break above this level, we could be going to a new all-time high. Just saying, in USD. Obviously, we're miles away in BTC pairs, right? But that is a very, very interesting area. We have done a massive push, and we could argue we are probably going to correct a little bit. Wouldn't shock me if we go back down to these sort of levels here, which is actually a really good confluence point, and then maybe shoot up to the moon. Just saying. But again, if we want to talk about like a bit of fibception, if we're going to go from this, low into a pullback, the 0.618 is right on this all-time high. It's all looking pretty damn mirrored, right? And a bit of fibception going on. So that looks pretty good. Just be mindful of it, right? So obviously, I don't want to get too much hopium involved here, but we've got to remember this market is pretty damn brutal, especially for altcoins. As I said, taps turn off very, very quickly. However, let's talk about other things because CZ has just tweeted saying, well, altcoin index is starting to trickle up. Not sure how, correct it is, but it is trickling. And he's right. It is. And if you've been watching my videos, you would have seen this at like 21, 27 not too long ago. Now it's into the 50s, 56 actually. So yeah, this is a very much lagging indicator, and it's not amazing, but ultimately, a lot of altcoins are, as it stands right now, outperforming Bitcoin, and a lot of altcoins are actually green, apart from the obvious in the room, which is obviously that PI thing, bollocks, yeah, and then pump, obviously, but stuff is looking relatively good. But other things as well, ETF volume has not been very favorable for the last 2 days on the Ethereum ETF, but the Bitcoin one hasn't, but the Ethereum one has, if I'm getting my words right. So Ethereum still, yeah, it's still trickling up nicely. So when we talk about that, we've got to talk about other elements of the altcoin market. So if we're going to go to the total three, this is where it's at. And the total three is looking much stronger than what it was, which is good to know. If we are, however, looking at others slash BTC, this again is looking a little bit better, but it's not perfect. So we're still at the point where nothing's gone berserk just yet. However, total three slash, BTC minus the stable currencies is starting to show us a sign of a change of character here. We've got above certain levels. We're looking much, 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 much healthier and going towards certain points. And even if you're looking at others.d, or whatever. We're looking at certain levels and we need to get towards, I think personally, this 9% level. This 9% level has to get, we'll get above that, change the character, and we continue going up to the upside. That would be a really good thing. And that might actually be the full on confirmation of a potential alt season. So, yes, you are still early. It is still very selective. And I wouldn't say ape into things, especially won't say don't ape into meme coins because a lot of meme coins have actually ran quite hard. And going back to that and going back to that word meme coins are all across this top part. Literally, just look, pause the screen and just count how many meme coins it is. There's quite a few. So just be mindful of that. Don't just ape into it. And that's the thing. We are hitting key levels of interest where we could be that pretty close. And going into the stable currency dominance, we are still dropping. We need to go into these levels and definitely into this level to get a real big flurry. But going back into it, overall across USD pairs, market structure is relatively bullish. It's quite good. We've got a little element of, well, wow, we're actually doing a bounce. It's actually sustaining for a couple of weeks here. Wow. And this, in my viewpoint, is a real shift in terms of momentum that we've not seen for quite a while. And when we look back in the past here, obviously, yes, we had the 20, on Cardano at least, we had that, that ISO boom. And a couple of altcoins did react off that. But some are looking okay, some are not. And some have reacted better than others. And you got to look at the fact that in terms of bullish structure, BNB, the biggest exchange, is at an all-time high. Okay, so you kind of get the point here where things are happening. We're starting to see a little bit of rotation, a little bit of interest. Even the likes of Dogecoin, for example, is looking relatively strong versus what it has been. And as you can see here, we had a big, massive run in that, the end of that year. And even at the end of the previous year, wow, we had this big run. Now we're here. Wow, okay. It's looking a lot neater. New assets such as Hype has been doing fantastic, and a lot of their structure is relatively bullish. But what does it mean for everything else? Well, actually, what does it mean is the fact that Bitcoin dominance has actually dropped. Now, two scenarios we have. Obviously, I've talked about the fact that we have had the longest run ever in Bitcoin dominance kind of spree, which is why everyone's in pieces right now. But there's two scenarios here. Scenario A is we just go down, right? We'll talk about two scenarios, right? The scenario is we just nuke, right? But the other scenario could be we copy what happened here and we go up first and down, which would indicate that Bitcoin flies and then rotates into altcoins. But as I say, we don't know how low these are going to go, right? We don't know where the dominance is going to go. What if we don't get as much of a rotation and it's a lot more selective? That could be quite painful. So yes, we are looking at certain things, but we've got to look at the fact of how low is the Ethereum dominance. Well, it is only 11.51%. That's quite low versus where it was not that long ago, right? Arguably, you could say the same for Solana. starting to trickle up a little bit, but a lot of these are doing pretty well, a lot better. And BNB, yeah, it's still here. Its dominance was much, much higher. So you could showcase the fact that Bitcoin dominance has really, really gone and squashed everything. Now, if you want more videos, you can check out Patreon. There's a lot of things happening under the hood, which I will explain in a separate video at some point. More stuff is coming. It's going to get very, very, very interesting very, very soon, and you'll know why. However, 50% off for the first month if you so wish to jump in. Videos, diaries, journals, whatever, all kinds. And soon, live streams. Let's talk about the macro background, so to speak, and that is really crazy. One, gold is trying to break its all-time high, just saying. And that's interesting, right? The Nasdaq is just off it square to the upside. The S&P 500, off it goes to the upside, right? There's obviously possibilities for pullbacks here, obviously, because I think in August you're going to get tariff mayhem again. So that could be interesting. But ultimately, we have recovered from that. I don't want to have a situation where we're just go nuke itself, right? Just saying. But the one thing that I tweeted about yesterday or on X, whatever, I talked about the fact that the need for people to sack Powell is unbelievable. Inflation's came down, unemployment's at a good level, and they still want to sack him. I mean, the UK is absolutely buggered, by the way. We're not calling to sack all the bloody people at the Bank of England, right? Just saying. So this is really, really interesting. So we're at this point in time where everything's risk on. And even that, Bitcoin's at all-time highs. Altcoins are not. Altcoins are the one that need to really catch up. And that's where I think everyone will be much happier when that does happen. So just be mindful. But there is obviously possibilities of pullbacks here. But saying that though, what if Bitcoin squirts up to the upside, goes higher, then chills out, altcoins breathe, and then off it goes? We still have that window of opportunity of the 4-year cycle, especially when it comes to everything else, where we go absolutely berserk in Q4, which could be very, very, very interesting. And that could lead to certain situations such as interest rates dropping, other elements around that. Yeah, that could be fun. So keep an eye on it. And even though I'm talking about altcoins haven't ran yet, it's a bit wishy-washy, it's a bit we are at a really, really high point, and it's been the highest for a long, long, long time here. And this is interesting. Obviously, as I mentioned before, the Ethereum ETF inflows are really, really good. Slightly better than what you expected in terms of like the past, because I think the Ethereum ETF was very, very poor to start off with. And this is where it looks interesting. And obviously, you talk about search volume over the last quarter, it's up 52% according to keywords everywhere, which is huge. So people are talking about it. People are looking. People are like showcasing text messages in my Patreon, which is quite funny actually. When people are going, "Should I buy this?" What? All of a sudden, people are coming back to it. So interest over time has definitely improved. Obviously, the details around why it's in certain countries is obviously a bit interesting, but we have got some breakouts between alt season 2025, obviously the Genesis Act, or whatever, Genius Act, Genius Act, sorry. Altcoins, how to find altcoins, all these kind of stuff. Like, okay, so it's looking a bit better, but Bitcoin is still a lot lower. But I think the interest around Bitcoin is a lot lower. Either way, with all-time high, I reckon if Bitcoin goes from 150 to 200k, I think that'll be different. By the way. And again, you can argue cryptocurrency. Yeah, its interest has definitely peaked here, but realistically, it's pretty shit. Let's just start talking about those. So what to wait for realistically, and just to run back a little bit, we need to wait for some confirmations. One, we need Ethereum to fuck off to the moon, basically. Long story short, it needs to fly through there, but ultimately we need to look at this BTC pair, and we need to get above certain levels. Realistically, it needs to trickle and carry on going. We also need to look at the likes of the total 3. We need to look at the dominant side of it as well, with like the total 3 / BTC, for example. This needs to change character, change structure, and continue and make an uptrend for the first time in a couple of years, at least. And not to mention, and I mentioned it before, it's up to you if you want to listen or not, 9% at least on here. This area here realistically needs to break. Whether it does or not, who knows? I don't know. We'll see. But that's, for me, maybe berserk season for a lot of things. And I still think it's very selective. I still think we haven't missed the boat here. And realistically, you want to kind of get in with momentum, and you don't want to just buy tops. And a lot of people do buy tops, and it really does hurt. It's not ideal. This is why I'm trading. This is why I recommend to people now, trade more than bloody spot hold. Obviously, risk on, risk off. Huge factor here, and I do teach it quite a lot, is obviously risk on, risk off regarding stable currencies. That tells you where the market's going normally. If it's going down, it's usually good. If it's going up, it's usually shit. But personally, I think you should always keep an eye on strong narratives. For me, I'm betting massively on the Bitcoin ecosystem. You know that. You've obviously got AI, you've got DePIN, you've got real world assets, you've got obviously DeFi as well. Old school DeFi might do very, very well in the Ethereum ecosystem. So the likes of your MakerDAO, for example, Curve, etc., will probably do very well with a bullish Ethereum. Don't go mental, don't go crazy, but realistically, you got to look into the high conviction plays. I mentioned it in my last video. Feel free to watch it. Look out for ecosystem bubbles. Look out for like how things will pop off in certain ecosystems. Like I said before, with meme coins. Certain meme coins and certain ecosystems will do very, very well randomly, just will. So yeah, keep an eye out, but look at the dominance as well. There will be clues everywhere, and there will be sentiment punches everywhere too. I will give you them specifically on videos with my YouTube metrics. You will see how retail are coming back. And if you enjoyed today's video, please do leave a like. And as I say, get over 500 likes. Hopefully I've got one from you now. And comment what you think is going to happen very, very soon.